So, okay, on to the big topic of why we're here today. I call this community watch, and it is. We are all connected financially and from a business perspective, back and forth within this community. That's dangerous. Because as you know, any community watch is only as good as its weakest link. And right now, to be brutally honest with all of you, you're here because we've identified you as some of our weakest links. Not you individually, our customers. F&M Bank has tons of regulators and tons of folks who make sure on a consistent basis that we're being tested and are doing all the things we need to do to stay cybersecurity focused. You guys don't have that in your industries. And I'm here to tell you, you need it. And we're going to give you a couple of tips today on how to do that. We're going to talk about a lot of things, not just firewalls. We're going to talk about physical security of your data too. We're going to give you a few best practices that are just really simple within your business, things you may or may not think about. Because when I say the weakest link is you, I talk about, yes, our clients and their businesses, but it's literally you as a human being. You're the part that gets social engineered. You're the way typically they get in, you or your employees. And we're going to talk about how to avoid that as well. So it's a very difficult problem to solve, but we're going to give you some simple tools today that hopefully you get there. Now, we hear a lot about cybersecurity. We hear a lot about folks who have lost money here, and you're going to hear a little bit from Mr. Walser here in a few minutes about our friends in Cabarrus County that lost $1.7 million over a building project. And that one, by the way, is one of those simple best practices we're going to give you later in the day. Had they done it, it would have never happened. So we'll give you those pieces. But the thing I want you to walk away with is understanding this can happen to you. This is not something that happens in Atlanta, Georgia. This is not something that happens in New York City only. It happens right here in Salisbury. Fortunately, we have some good friends who can stand up and remind us that it does happen in Salisbury. Many of you probably know Terry Osborne with our local ABC board. They had an event, and Terry was good enough to run back from Washington, D.C., where he was doing a little work this week, and run right out of the hospital where he had some kidney stones removed and still be here to talk to you about cybersecurity. So you know it's important to him. We did get him to take off the hospital gown because we didn't want him to turn around and walk out. But he got his tie on, and we're glad to have him here. Mr. Terry Osborne is going to share one of their stories with you.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here this morning, and as Steve said, it's been a hectic couple of weeks indeed, to say the least. I always stated I got a couple. I realized my age when I look around in here and see 3 or 4, including this gentleman right in front of me, former students, and shows how old I am. But that is the great thing, and that's what is great about this community. It's what's great about Cheerwine, what's great about F&M, and all those commercials. Steve, y'all do it so well, and this community is very, very close. And I always like to quote, "Some see things as they are and say why. You should dream things that never were and say, why not?" And that's the thing that's great about everyone sitting in this room. Everyone's dreamers. Everyone is dreamers. I got to share, just like last week, Nicole with us on that trip. Nicole, what a wonderful experience, right? And I've got to share because they are a part of this community right quickly. Elizabeth Dole last week was phenomenal. The event that was held up there, what she is doing with the hidden heroes, people who are caretakers for veterans, and of course she's had to have caretakers for Senator Bob all these years, and so she started this foundation, and what a remarkable thing. And many times throughout her program she talked about, you know, where her roots were and where it all started, and that always reviews the closeness of this community and where she grew up, and she's never forgotten that, although her career has been away from us. She's never forgotten her roots. And so that is the neat thing about all this. And while we were standing there talking, Steve, there was a young lady came up. She said, "I thought I heard you all say y'all from North Carolina." And we said, "Yes." And said, "What part are you from?" We said, "Salisbury, midway between Charlotte and Greensboro." She said, "I know where Salisbury at." She said, "In 2005, I was a Catawba graduate." She is now a caretaker for her husband, who is paralyzed from his neck down from being injured in the war in Afghanistan. And so it's a small world, but she started sharing stories of Salisbury and the closeness that she felt. And she said, I want an excuse to come back to Salisbury. She lives in Florida. And she says, I want to have an excuse to come back. So as Nicole was standing there, we said, well, you can come back. And so she's coming back here to speak about, you know, her involvement with her husband and what it's been like being a caretaker at a young age, you know, and how their marriage has even grown closer and closer. So anyway, and I'm just going to read, I hate to do it, but I'm just going to tell you because I don't want to forget anything. 1 year ago, our entity was hit with fraud. By the way, how many, with the F&M cards, I believe, Trace, isn't it Walmart is number 2, is that correct, that the F&M cards are used? Who knows where the F&M card is used number 1 in this community? ABC. Yeah. So you wonder why we're concerned about cybersecurity. That is why we're concerned about cybersecurity at me.
Take my part every Friday.
And we thank you all so much. And I tell you what, you know, we are now delighted that we have the third largest store over there in the state of North Carolina. And thanks to F&M, who helped us with that loan to get that new endeavor on board. And now a recent project, as you all, Kannapolis, not only Salisbury, but Kannapolis is exploding also. Their population just went over 50,000, and so got a new project, so we're delighted. And the thing that's been wonderful about it, we've been delighted because of the work with F&M and the new cybersecurity things that they have introduced to us since our issue. 1 year ago, it's ironic that this program is today on Halloween Day, as Chip, my friend, said a while ago, but you know, it's a good day for it. And 1 year ago, we were notified, I think Alice Perry called us, and she said, I want to question a check. She said, it's out of sequence, $26,000. Well, lo and behold, $26,000, you know, Kettner Center, that's a day's work at Kettner Center. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but $26,000 all of a sudden, and it was a fraudulent check. So it was really an awakening for us on that date, but since that date, you know, we've worked with Rhonda Martin to add positive pay to our new account where we upload our check registers now to the F&M website each time the checks are written. This lets F&M know that we approve these checks with all our transactions being paid. And if they don't approve the transactions, then we know that F&M know that they're fraudulent and they are to be returned. That same endeavor, I think it was actually a gentleman written a check from Kansas, but it was traced back, and the reason it was traced back, I think, with a lot of the systems in North Carolina, the ABC systems were hit at that same time frame. And so all of them, I don't know if they've been as fortunate to have somebody get on board like we have with F&M, you know, even with they've helped us upgrade our counterfeit detectors, things like that, you know, just the everyday things that are so critical. We even had about 4 weeks ago, about a month ago, we had someone pass a $100 bill that went through they're always told, especially if they're handed a $100 bill to run it. It was ran on 2 of those entities, one of the most upgraded, up-to-date detectors there is. And guess what? People are getting so technical with things now, it went through and was approved. And then guess who found it? F&M found that bad check. So those are the things that we're talking about, and you know, I don't want to continue to bore you with it because I know there's a lot of outstanding stories here, but the synopsis of all this is that after this happened, as I said, it was an awakening, and so I would encourage each of you to really stay on top of things and make sure you know, with the change of time and when you think you're on top of things, have these folks come in and check and make sure that you are, and because it can easily happen. And it is like a family atmosphere. You know, when you walk into F&M and they always say, by the way, we may need to do this, or we may need to do that. And I am always receptive because I know they're not just out for business, that's what they're assigned to do, yes. But when I walk in the door and they tell you, you know, because of cybersecurity, we may need to look at something else, and all these folks at F&M can tell you that we're certainly doing that now because we were victims of it. But I want you to see how that can, as Steve said a while ago, you hear about all these things happening in large cities around the country and this and that. And I guess we were fortunate when I heard the $1.7 million thing in Concord you're talking about. We felt like, you know, this pocket change. But again, I want to thank all of you and the opportunity to be here this morning. And I hope that you all will continue to upgrade your facilities to make sure we stay ahead of the fraud and those who day by day sit and try to figure out how they can beat systems and beat the new technology, because it happens. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. Grab that. We are recording this morning for those who couldn't be here. So a couple things about the facility. One, restrooms. If you know where you had breakfast this morning, right around those tables are where the restrooms are. If you need to go at any time, please feel free to get up and go. If you'd like some more food, get up and go. I'll just ask that you use the door over here to the right. Most of your presenters are going to be, or excuse me, my right, your left. Most of your presenters are going to be over here. I'd make a terrible stewardess. The exit is over here. So before I turn it over to Brad, I want to reiterate a couple of things you heard from Terry. You're going to hear a full spectrum today. That was a check issue. Why is a check issue a cyber issue? Because the response and the proactive thing you can do about that check is a cyber issue. There are cyber solutions to a simple check fraud issue. There are also a lot of purely cyber issues that you can only deal with by protecting your systems at a better level. Now I'm going to introduce you to Brad Walser here for a second. Brad is someone we've worked with consistently with our clients who have had cyber issues over the years. Brad can do a couple of things for you, and there's a reason he's here. He's one of the leaders in our region in this topic. He's here in Salisbury talking today because he's here in Salisbury, and that's where his business is. We had him in Cabarrus County earlier in the week, not because he's a good Salisbury boy and we wanted to expose him to Cabarrus County so much, but because he's the leader in that county as well in helping folks do these types of things. He's going to do a couple things for you. One, help you be proactive. So he's kind of like your doctor. He's going to tell you the things not to do so that you don't get in trouble. But he's also going to be your Ghostbuster. If you get in trouble, who are you going to call? You call him. They have a staff that's ready to come in, help identify what's happened with you and how to work your way through it. Both of those components are important. You need somebody in your life to help you, remind you the importance of doing the proactive things because they're going to change over time, because the bad guys change and alter how they attack you over time. But you also need somebody to call if you're unfortunate enough to have an event. I wish I could tell each of you that if you do all these things, your business is going to be completely secure. I'd be lying to you. We can all be gotten. I'm throwing myself in that and every bank in the industry. These folks are after us 24/7. But what you want to be is what I tell Jim Hartzell. He's sitting right here. Raise your hand, Jim. Jim's our IT director. And what I tell Jim on a constant basis is I want to be that house in the neighborhood that's got the big fence around it, 10 or 12 different signs on it that say we're CPI protected, a couple of really big dogs and bars on the windows. So when the bad guy's strolling down my street, he's going to go, yeah, that's not worth it, and move on to the next house. That's really the best you can do, is to become the house that the crooks just pass by, because it's too much effort to get in. So Brad's going to tell you how to make your house that way. And he's also going to tell you what to do in case they do get aggressive and try to get in. So with Walser Technology Group, our friend Brad Walser.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. So as Steve mentioned, I am Brad Walser, president of Walser Technology Group. Thank you all for coming out on this rainy Halloween morning. But what better day than to scare everybody than on Halloween to talk to you a little bit about cybersecurity, physical security, banking security. We've got a lot of great topics today. So we want to talk about cyber securing your business. And we do have an agenda put together for you today. On this agenda, we'll do a brief introduction about Walser Technology Group, the things we do and can help you with, some industry terms, some statistics, some mitigations and training, some recommendations, and then we'll get to some questions and answers right at the end of my presentation. And then if it goes too long, we will hold some of those questions till the end of everyone's presentation. As an introduction of Walser Technology Group, we are locally owned and operated. We're in what's called the managed service provider space. We've been supporting businesses since August of 2003. We are one block away in an 1891 remodeled and purpose-built facility at 108 South Main Street. We currently support over 2,800 assets across 150 different business customers. We work in the utility space, medical space, manufacturing, retail, city, county government, local nonprofit, legal, education, and country club space. We have partnered with a lot of leading manufacturers, but today I'm going to focus on really 3 of our manufacturers. We are a Dell EMC Gold partner. We're the only Gold partner in Rowan County and even in Cabarrus County. We are also partnered with a company called KnowBe4. You'll hear a little more about KnowBe4 as this program goes on. That's the software we use behind our training program. And we are a SonicWall Silver partner. SonicWall is a firewall security appliance company that we use and roll out to most of our individuals, or most of our businesses. We focus on support, security, cloud, strategy, and hardware. Those are our 5 focus areas as an organization. So the world of cybersecurity is filled with all sorts of great terms: spoofing, phishing, ransomware, social engineering, watering holes, zero-day, red teaming. Most of my customers look at me and say, hey, help me figure this stuff out. This is crazy. What do all these terms mean? We don't have enough time today to get through all of them, but we're going to talk through some of the main terms here. So an important thing to understand is Cybersecurity Ventures predicted that cybercrime will cost the world $6 trillion annually by 2021. That's up from $3 trillion in 2015. This represents the greatest transfer of economic wealth in history and will become more profitable than the global trade of all major illegal drugs combined. So I know news outlets are picking up on cybercrime issues. It seems like every day you turn on the news, you hear about that. You also hear a lot about the war on drugs. Cybercrime has exceeded the war on drugs from an actual economic capacity. Cybersecurity involves protecting critical information by preventing, detecting, and responding to attacks. And you'll hear this again in the presentation, that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. That's a very important piece I need everyone to walk away with. It's a shared responsibility. As a service provider, I wish I could sell you one appliance. Hey, buy this one thing and you are completely covered. All you have to do is buy this. You're good. You can sleep well at night. I'd be lying to you if I told you that. It's unfortunate that you have to have all sorts of layers of security. There's security awareness you need to educate your employees on. There are smart attackers out there that are always figuring out new ways to compromise an organization. So very important to remember, cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. So phishing. When you hear the word phishing, everyone's like, you mean like a fisherman? And well, it's not really like a fisherman unless we're going to take a minute and break this down. Well, the fisherman really could be the cyber criminal. The fishing pole, well, that's the internet. The bait, that's an attachment or a link they're going to send you. And the fish, well, it's you. They're trying to fish you and they're trying to get your credentials and your information. So by definition, it's an attempt to obtain sensitive information such as usernames, passwords, credit card details, often for malicious reasons by masquerading as a trustworthy entity in an electronic communication. That's what phishing is by definition, but you can think of the fisherman example. Just understand they're coming after you. So I get the question a lot, well, you know, I get all those darn spam emails. Yes, they're trying to fish me all the time. Well, phishing and spam are technically 2 different items. A spam email is really unsolicited information or a sales inquiry. So if you think of an example, well, you know, this email looks like a coupon, but I don't shop at that store and I never asked for this coupon. That's spam. It's an annoyance. It's somebody giving you something legitimate to come shop at their store, to buy their product, but you didn't ask for it, you don't want it. Well, phishing, if you think about it from a malicious intent perspective, they're trying to steal your credentials or gain access to your account or offload your data. So in this example, well, it looks like a coupon in the email, but if you were to actually click on it, it's going to load a keystroke logger or ransomware on your machine so that they can extort you for money. So at the end of the day, spam and phishing are 2 different items. Another industry term that goes with phishing is ransomware. This is usually the payload that's attached to a phishing email. Ransomware is malicious software designed to encrypt the files on your PC, make them unusable unless you pay a ransom to have them decrypted. Most of the time, it will also scan your network and encrypt any files you can find on a remote machine as well. This computer malware covertly installs on the computer, adversely affects it, and demands a ransom payment to decrypt or not publish the files. And you know, you hear about this all the time. As Steve mentioned, yes, it happens in Atlanta. I was actually affected by that at a business meeting in Atlanta, I'll talk about later. It happens in Cabarrus County. It happened in Mecklenburg County. Ransomware shut down Mecklenburg County. It happens all around us. It also happens here in Rowan County and all of our surrounding counties, I can assure you. People ask, you know, again, where are these things going on? Well, there was a lot of articles written in September of this year. Upstate New York School District had to delay the start of school because they received a ransomware attack that hampered its operations. The Orange County School District joins an unhappy parade of municipalities that have fallen victim to hackers. 2 Long Island school districts were hit by ransomware earlier in the summer. They also came right after 24 cities in Texas all fell victim of a coordinated attack that shut down these 24 municipalities in Texas. In the first half of the year, more than 50 cities or towns were victims of ransomware attacks, according to a report from Barracuda, who's a cybersecurity firm. 2/3 or more of the 70 ransomware attacks tracked in the U.S. focus on local and state governments, according to the report. You hear a lot about local and state governments because they're forced to actually comply and go to the Internet Crime Complaint Center with the FBI. Well, they go and report it. There are so many that go unreported in this country. So there's a lot of statistics on state and local government because they're forced to report when something like this happens. They're using public funds. So there's a lot of good statistics, but there's a lot of other unknown statistics or low or very conservative statistics on other private businesses because a lot of them don't report, unfortunately. So Cyber Defense puts out a report every year, and they want to talk to about 1,200 IT professionals, and they want to know, hey, what is it that's a concern? What are the cyber threats you're worried about as an IT professional? Well, their top 4 are highlighted there, that they're worried about malware, they're worried about phishing and spear phishing attacks, they're worried about ransomware, and they're worried about account takeover or credential abuse of one of their employees. These are the top 4 items that people are concerned with when you're talking to IT professionals. If you read the Verizon data breach report, if you're one of those people like me who loves finding out this information, you'll see that in 60% of the cases, attackers are able to compromise an organization within minutes. That's hard to believe, but it's a very true statement, that in 60% of cases, people are compromised within minutes. So hey, we know it's a problem. Why aren't we combating it better? Why isn't there something we can do? Why isn't there that one appliance somebody can buy? Well, the barriers to establishing those effective defenses, that's how they phrase it for those same 1,200 individuals. Well, there's just too much data to analyze. We don't have skilled personnel. There's a lack in the industry of skilled personnel. There's low security awareness among your employees, or there's poor integration or operability between all these different security solutions. You know, I talked about spam earlier. Well, spam is one thing, phishing's another thing. There's different tools to combat each of those items. Every piece of your network has different tools and vendors that have a industry-specific item just for that piece of the network. So there's just too much data and lack of skilled personnel. If you talk to Panda Security, they'll tell you by 2021, there's going to be over 3.5 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs. So if any of y'all want a career change, you have children, grandchildren that are wondering what career is going to be lucrative, put them in the cybersecurity field. It is an ever-growing field that is certainly going to have a shortage of unfilled positions. So something else we can talk about is a CEO fraud or business email compromise. This is the industry term where an email scam in which an attacker spoofs a message from a boss and tricks someone at the organization into wiring funds or sending information to fraudsters. The FBI announced in 2019 that over $9 billion in losses had been reported through the Internet Crime Complaint Center. This is with the FBI, the ICCC, and this is where you should be reporting your crimes as they happen. Unfortunately, as we talked about, not everyone does that. This also sounds like, who in the world would fall for this? I'm going to send you an email and say, hey, this is Steve Fisher from F&M Bank. Please wire me some money. I've got a project going on. Here's my wiring instructions. Well, who's going to fall for that? Well, as Steve told you, unfortunately that happened in Cabarrus County. Cabarrus County, they have to publicize who are the contractors that got projects. Well, when somebody found out the name of the contractor, they sent a very nice email that looked like it was the winning contractor who was building West Cabarrus High. And they said, hey, we've changed our wiring instructions. Please send our next paycheck to this address or into this wiring, to these funds. $2.5 million later, they figured out, the real contractor, where's my payment? Where did it go? By the time they figured it out, they were unable to recover $1.7 million that's still at large. So all of this because a legitimate email was sent that looked like it was somebody else, and it just gave some different wiring instructions. This is something that happened on a very large scale. Certainly $1.7 million is a big loss. I've worked with a lot of local firms. Well, they have something sent to their HR department, looks like it's from an employee. They're asking them to please change their direct deposit information. Well, you know what? Okay, that's nice. They must have changed banks. Let me change their direct deposit. Well, the employee gets a little grumpy after a day or two, and they're figuring out, where's my paycheck? They call in, and hey, it was never them that asked to move that direct deposit information. So there's plenty of local businesses here that have lost paychecks, have lost payroll. So again, this happens. It happens on a large scale. It happens on a small scale. And it all comes from what's called that business email compromise. Somebody's just masquerading or spoofing to be someone that they're not, asking you to do something. Mattel lost $3 million. They had a new CEO come in, and that CEO came in, and the controller wanted to make their CEO happy. He sent an email on a weekend asking to change over one of their new distributors in China. So they said, well, you know what? It only takes 2 people to be able to wire money, the CEO, and I'm one of the controllers here. All right, this is all I need. I changed it. Well, they wired $3 million to a fraudulent Chinese company. Mattel also got very lucky, and that's why this case is important. They wired it on a Chinese holiday, and they were actually able to recover their money. That is a very rare occasion that you can recover wire fraud funds. So we talked about phishing. There's also a term called spear phishing. Spear phishing really is just phishing attempts directed at specific individuals or companies. So you could be a target depending on your industry. You could be a target depending on your position. So these targeted attacks, they look at your Facebook page, your LinkedIn page, any public profiles, any news articles written about you. They try to gather personal information, and they try to target you to increase the probability of their success. So all I can tell you is be vigilant about what is posted about you publicly, and if you're relating any of that information back to your passwords or anything you use on the security side. Because there are people that will spend time to go out there and try to spearfish a organization. Today, this accounts for 91% of the attacks out there. So I have a firm that's going through security awareness training right now, and part of what we do in this program you'll learn a little bit more about is we try to do what's called a baseline. We try to figure out, okay, in a baseline test, how many people are going to fail? Because once we know how many people fail, then we only want to get better from there. Well, we have a number of generic templates we use to phish an organization. When I send you a simulated attack on your company, some of them look like Dunkin' Donuts coupons. Some of them look like their UPS sent you a package and you weren't there. Some of them may even say you're being summoned to court. Some of them may say you're in a red light. You know, there's all sorts of things that are just generic templates that could be applicable to anybody. Hey, you ordered something on Amazon you really didn't order. All of them have sorts of telltale signs of, hey, they're coming from a Yahoo address or Gmail. They're coming from different items you'll learn more about. Most of the time, organizations with generic templates fail anywhere from, let's call it 10 to 15 to 20%. Well, if I spend 5 minutes or less and I look at public-facing information and I try to put together a more targeted email, it may look like it came from your CEO, your CFO, your controller. Well, I usually get failure rates well over 50 to 60% at your organization. So by spending 5 minutes or less on public-facing information, I can take failure rates from around 15% to close to 60%. All it takes is 5 minutes. So you got to ask yourself, as Steve mentioned, you don't want to be low-hanging fruit. You do want to make sure that your employees are vigilant. And again, we'll talk more about that. So what's the impact? All right, hey, I got ransomware. What happens? People always wonder. Well, police in Texas lost 8 years of evidence due to a ransomware attack. So they lost their video evidence, their office document evidence, which is never a good thing as a police department. 8 days before Trump's inauguration, when he went to D.C., 70% of the closed-circuit TVs in D.C. went offline. They went offline due to ransomware. Well, they said, you know what, we're not going to pay the ransom, we're going to restore. It took them over 3 days to restore all those closed-circuit TVs, cameras. So for 3 days, they didn't have any cameras through D.C. as part of that inauguration. If you like to vacation in the Austrian Alps, this is a fun one. Austrian Alps has a 4-star hotel that used electronic key lock systems. They went offline due to ransomware. Well, it's really bad as a hotel when you can't let customers into their rooms. It's really bad when you can't check customers out. It's really bad when you can't tell them, hey, here's what you owe. So this particular case was an interesting read because they got hit with ransomware once and paid the ransom. They got hit a second time, they had to pay the ransom. They got hit a third time. The proprietor of the hotel got so upset he ripped out the electronic key card system and went back to manual keys through their hotel. Unfortunately, once you get hit once and you become a target and you pay the ransom, that's not to guarantee it couldn't happen again. Another interesting case study here is that 3 men made millions by hacking mergers lawyers. Well, what does that mean? It means that 3 Chinese citizens made more than $4 million off trading information that the SEC finally called on to. They had hacked 7 New York law firms that worked with mergers and acquisitions, and they knew about large mergers before they were going to happen, and they made millions. These same 3 men were also involved in startup companies that were stealing proprietary controllers and different solutions from companies, their proprietary designs. These are items that they got out of these law firms. So a lot of times when you're compromised, they're going to give you ransomware and they're going to demand payment. Well, in this case, they just decided to stick around and say, let's see what all we can learn from this company. And they started stealing data and they started making trades. Statistics will show you it's an average of 197 days. That's the time it takes an organization to spot that they've actually been breached. So if you don't immediately get ransomware, you have no idea someone's on your network looking at your files, offloading your data. Some of the smart ones even disable your backups, so you got to make sure you're checking those logs to know that, hey, something's wrong, backups aren't running. They'll do anything they can to try to get you to pay that ransom, and a lot of times it means let's learn about this organization, see what we can exploit, and then we go after them. So 197 days is the average it takes for someone to deal with, hey, we've been breached. The monetary loss is always bad, but as a business, your loss of credibility is worse. Your reputation is everything as a business, and that's what you don't want to have to come into play. Another industry term we can talk about is zero day. Zero day is something that gets a lot of press in our industry. It's attackers modify code and write new variations of malicious software. These are known as zero-day threats. This is where a majority of the infections and ransomware cases happen. Zero-day threats have no known signature until they're identified by security vendors, and then they update their signatures and they release them out into your environments. The window between discovery and signature generation can be hours or up to several days. This is where you have deep packet inspectors, spam filters, antivirus software. They cannot effectively block against these threats because they're not known yet. Unfortunately, with zero day, there's been a lot of new terms that have come into the industry. A lot of emerging technologies. You'll hear the term next generation device. Hey, we use artificial intelligence to try to know something before others do. We have deep learning and machine learning turned on with our software. These are all industry terms. Some of them use them as marketing hype. Others do have really cool technology behind them that just help add that next layer of protection to try to keep zero-day attacks out of your network. Social engineering. So in the context of information security, this refers to psychological manipulation of people into performing actions or divulging confidential information. It's a type of confidence trick for the purpose of information gathering, fraud, or system access. We released a newsletter earlier this week, and that newsletter has a great thing that was on CNN, and it was for somebody who went out to a convention, Black Hat convention in Las Vegas, and that person was traveling out there to do a news story, and sure enough, one of the hackers at the convention said, you know what, with social engineering, I can spend 5 minutes and I can gain access to any of your accounts. Tell me what you'd like to do. And he said, I don't think you can do it, so challenge accepted. They videotaped the whole thing. She got his seat moved to the back middle row of the plane as a way, where he was in the exit row. Also got into, I believe it was his Apple ID to have access to his Apple account. But it sat there and it happened live all through social engineering. Calling somebody, having a friendly voice, acting like you forgot something, just trying to trick the person on the phone to not follow their process or procedures and help out this customer to give someone access to an account or change some sort of information. To human as error. You know, we call it the human firewall, as Steve mentioned many times. Not to call you guys the weakest link, but all humans are the weakest link to any security structure. Kevin Mitnick. Kevin Mitnick is part of the Know Before program. He's considered their chief hacking officer. He was on the FBI's most wanted list in the 90s. He was the world's most famous hacker, and he didn't sit there and hack away on a keyboard. He called people and had wonderful social engineering skills. Well, he has a great quote. Companies spend millions of dollars on firewalls and secure access devices. And it's money wasted because none of these measures address the weakest link in the security chain, the people who use, administer, and operate computer systems. Again, the weakest link in the security chain is the people who use, administer, and operate computer systems. So I get asked a lot, hey, we know it's a problem. We know there's all these bad criminals out there. Why aren't they caught? Why can't we track these people down? Why can't we stop all of this cyber fraud? That's a great question. And there's another term we'll talk about today called Bitcoin. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. I'm sure everyone's probably heard of it by now. But if you understand it or not, that's another question. It's a digital asset and payment system introduced in October of 2008 to a cryptology mailing list. Since the system works without a central repository or single administrator, the US Treasury categorizes Bitcoin as a decentralized virtual currency. Bitcoin is the largest of its kind in terms of total market value. As of July of this year, 17.8 million Bitcoins issued at a market rate of close to $10,000 each. That's a $178.25 billion market to do global trade with no centralized bank or centralized repository understanding what's happening. And it's all backed by an algorithm. So this algorithm is worth $1.78 billion, $178 billion. This is where most of these cyber criminals are getting payments. Payments can be $500, they can be $5,000, they can be $5 million. But you know what? If you call the FBI and complain somebody just took you for $5,000, you're gonna say, I'm sorry, please report it to the Internet Crime Complaint Center. We don't open a case for anything less than $10,000. Most likely you're not gonna have any resources even assigned to you unless you're closer to $100,000. It's happening so frequently, people know how to stay under the radar. And if you steal $5,000 and you steal it 10,000 times, that's real money. And you're underneath the radar that nobody's gonna come in and try to catch you. Because for a $5,000 loss, you're only gonna spend so much resource on it. So Bitcoin is how most of this wealth is transferred. It's how most of these cyber criminals are paid. And up until very recently, it's been very hard for the FBI and anyone in law enforcement to track where Bitcoins go and who's on the backside of those Bitcoins. So Atlanta, Georgia, in March of 2018, affected 6 million people. So the original Bitcoin ransom in Atlanta was $52,000 demanded. The city of Atlanta said, nope, we're going to restore everything from backup. We are not paying $52,000. There are $9.8 million in contracted help right now, still trying to recover fully in Atlanta, Georgia. The reason Atlanta is near and dear to my heart is I was down there last year for a convention and met with some other industry leaders across the U.S., and we were supposed to view one of the people that are in this group, their nice new office space right in Peachtree Road in Atlanta. We couldn't wait to go and tour it, and a few weeks before we were supposed to show up for the conference, we all got told, hey, we're moving it to the hotel across the street. Well, we did get to put on hard hats and go view the construction, but they were about 8 months behind schedule because they couldn't get building permits from the city of Atlanta. So for almost 8 months, they got delayed on a huge construction project simply because all their offices were taken down with ransomware. So it affects multiple industries, it affects multiple parts of the business. So how do you stay protected? Well, this is a typical model of layered security. In our industry, we call it defense in depth. It's something I certainly subscribe to. It's something we use ourselves. You want to have all sorts of secure routers, stateful firewalls. You want to make sure there's a DMZ zone, anything public facing. You want internal firewalls. You want to make sure your intranet's got proxy servers. You want to make sure that you've got intrusion detection. You've got antivirus. You've got all these fun things that I'm sure a lot of you have in your network. You need these defense in layers. That's great, and certainly that's a wonderful model that most all security professionals will follow. But you also have to stop, look, and think. Stop, look, and think is part of the campaign that is from KnowBe4. You need your employees to stop, look, and think about what they're doing. Because remember, we stated cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. And those organizations that got compromised within minutes, I can have every one of these devices on my network. And you know what? I can send through a phishing email and have one employee click on the wrong link. Now I'm on their machine watching what they do, and I'm actually taking their credentials every site they log into. All it took was that one click on an email of an unsuspecting user, and I'm through all of these defense layers. So again, cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. This is an example of something that we send out, as we talked about, one of our generic templates. Well, it's nice of United States Postal Service to tell me I missed a package. But you know what? Pay close attention. USPS-mailer.gov. Sounds official, but that's not really United States Postal Service. That's not their domain. And they certainly don't have a reply to address that goes to Yahoo. Why in the world would the government be sending me something from a Yahoo account and a bogus USPS domain? Well, if you were to hover over any of the links, you'll also see it doesn't take you to these sites that look like it's the USPS.com. It takes you over to other links that are malicious links. So there's all sorts of telltale signs in this email that tell me just delete it and move on, report it to my security team, don't click it. So this is one example. Another one that came in is, wasn't it so nice of Apple? They sent me something saying my Apple ID has been disabled. They disabled it for security reasons. They care about me at Apple, that's nice. Well, they just want me to go out and confirm my identity. So if I don't, then they're gonna have to freeze my account. So I better go do what they're asking me to do. Well, you know what? Let's take a quick look at this. AppleID-verification.com, that's not apple.com. If you go down here and you click on confirm my identity, it takes you to a page and it looks really nice. Well, this Apple ID, it goes out to that bogus domain again. That's not apple.com. This is a real phishing email I got in my inbox previous to giving a presentation last year. And I said, you know what? This literally came into my inbox today. I'm going to take it as a real world example. This is a true phishing email that came into my inbox. I know that that's not apple.com. What they want you to do is put in your credentials. And guess what? Once you put them in, they now have access to your Apple account, your credit cards on your Apple account, can make purchases on your behalf. They can do all sorts of things once they get you to try to log in and confirm your identity. So be wary of what you're clicking on and where it's taking you. So urgency, fear, those are two items that they like to prey on. As part of our program, what we call security awareness training, we have some custom infographics. These custom infographics are something that you hang in your office. They're 2-foot by 3-foot prints. We have 5 of them in a series. They're framed here downtown locally at our Fine Frame Gallery. They really just talk about what are we learning as part of this program. Because you can have a face-to-face training like this, you can do some computer-based training, and you can check the box and say, hey, we're done. But how do you change your user's behavior? Changing a user's behavior, that's not a trivial task. That's something that takes time, energy, and effort. So we put these out there. It talks to you about look for greed, urgency, curiosity, fear. Make sure you're checking email signatures, sender's address, and the email tone. You know, if somebody doesn't use these words in conversation, why would they use these words as part of their email? What's the email tone? Look at the attachments. Make sure that you're looking at any URLs or links. And if you see something, make sure you report it. If you went back to your organization right now and said, guys, gals, what if you saw something you shouldn't? Who do you tell? Maybe you have a technology point of contact. Maybe they see the owner in the hallway and mention it casually. Maybe they call everyone they can and send it to everyone at the organization. Everyone watch out for this. They tried to take me for my credentials. What is that incident response? How are people supposed to tell people? How do you warn your security team so that someone knows there's something going on that's fishy at the organization? That's an exercise everyone can go back and go through because you want to make sure it's clearly defined that your employees know what to do. This is something called a fish alert button that comes in as part of the program. And if you click the button, it automatically sends it to deleted items and puts it over to an inbox that's being monitored by our team or by your team, just depending on the situation, so that we can look at something and make sure, hey, this is legitimate or not legitimate. You always want to lock your workstation. You can use the Windows key L or hot corners if you use a Macintosh. So when you get up to go to lunch, lock your machine. When you get up to go to the restroom, lock your machine. When you get up to go get coffee, lock your machine. Do not leave your machine unlocked and unattended. Doesn't matter where you are. If you think you're secure in your office, doesn't matter if you're at a coffee shop, doesn't matter where you are. Always lock your machine if you're not the one behind it. Never insert an unknown USB stick to your computer. Well, everyone goes to trade shows. Everyone gets these USB sticks. I'm sure you all have a drawer of 20 of them you got from any given point in time. Be wary about what you plug into your machine because you know what? You don't know what's going to load on the backside. So all I can tell you is be very vigilant that if you don't know where it came from, do not plug it into your machine. Never use a Post-it note for storing your passwords. So I'm going to ask, by show of hands, how many people have a sticky note either on their monitor, in their top right drawer, or under their keyboard? And it's okay if nobody wants to admit to it. But I can guarantee you if I came to all of your offices, I'd have a very high success rate of finding out your passwords by looking under your keyboard, stuck to your monitor in the top right drawer. Unfortunately, it's just habit. And a lot of people do it, but I'm telling you, please be wary of where you post your passwords. Anyone coming by these days can snap a picture on a camera. Now they've got your password, even if they're only at your office for 10 seconds. Always use a unique and complex password for each online system that you access. That is also very important. Steve mentioned he wants the house with the fence. He wants the dogs. He wants the signs. He wants to make sure, you know what? I am not the easiest target on my street. You do not want to be the easiest target. And if you're using the same password every site you go to, you are the easy target. I can take $20, go on this thing called the dark web, not to scare anybody, this deep dark place of the internet that most people don't know exists. I can spend $20, I can come back with 100,000 usernames and passwords. You know what? I can take that 100,000 usernames and passwords, write a little script, and try to inject it at every banking site, every credit card site, every 401k site, all of these online systems. And you know what? If you use the same username and password everywhere, ding, 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 I now have access to all of your accounts by spending $20 and getting a legitimate list of 100,000 known usernames and passwords. Those same people are taking that list and they're sending emails. I get quite a few of these requests. Hey, I want you to know we're on your machine. We've been videotaping you on your webcam. We have offloaded all of your documents. We want you to know that here's your password, just so you know that we know who you are. If you don't pay us this ransom, we're going to publish all your data, all your secrets. We're going to take your web history. I mean, it's all sorts of variations. Well, you know what? All they did was they went on the dark web and they bought a password that at one time may have been legitimate. But that little bit of legitimacy, it really freaks clients out. Oh my God, they are on my machine. They know what I'm doing. I better go pay this $500 or this $1,000. So I don't want all of my clients' data out there on the internet. Well, it is a scam, and I can tell you, just please delete it and move on. It's good to run another scan on your virus cleaner, but at the end of the day, those are scams where people are buying your legitimate information off the dark web and using it as a scare tactic, trying to get you to pay a ransom. So don't be low-hanging fruit. Do not use the same password at every site you go to online. Another one of our infographics talks about a lot of the items, the important one of keeping your systems and workstations patched, making sure you're using an HTTPS connection anywhere that you're going out to do credit card or any kind of financial transactions or confidential information. So again, another infographic that hangs around the office to reinforce training material. So what are the true recommendations I want everyone to walk away with today? Well, backups. A lot of times people want to tell cyber criminals, hey, the heck with you guys, I'm not paying your ransom, I'm going to my backups. That's a great move. You shouldn't pay the ransom if you've got good, clean backups. Well, you know what? Backups run because you know what? Somebody came in 3 years ago and they told me just to change this tape every day and they're running, right? No. Unfortunately, 2.5 years ago, you got a Microsoft update and it broke that script that was running. And so for 2.5 years, you've been changing out tapes and your backups really aren't there. It's very important that you have a backup strategy in place. You also are checking logs. You're also testing recovery points in the data integrity. Because if you're not, you have no idea if that data is actually there or not. Layered security. You should have spam filters, security appliances, next generation firewalls and virus protection. And something else you'll learn more about is 2FA, two-factor authentication. That is something very important that's been getting a lot of press these days, and it is something we've subscribed to for years. Two-factor authentication is something you have, something you know, or something you are. What does that mean, Brad? Well, something you have. It's usually going to be a hard token that gives you a key that resets every 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. It could also be your cell phone that has a soft token, a piece of software you bring up that has a resetting token. Something you know would be a password that only you know, and something you are could be your fingerprint, could be your optical scan. So if you take those three variables and you need two of those three variables for it truly to be two-factor authentication. Normally it's a complex password that only you know and a soft token you have on your phone. That's the most common way today to enact two-factor authentication. Highly recommend that for any of the systems that allow two-factor authentication that you use daily, that have confidential data in them. Patch management. You want to make sure that you're getting all your critical and security patches and that it's on a routine basis. You can't just say, hey everybody, make sure they reboot your machine when it tells you to. Well, that's easily said, but who's actually monitoring that that's actually happening? And you know what? I can tell you plenty of people at organizations that are just too busy, they never reboot their machine unless they have to. And then they want it to reboot quick, so they never say install updates and reboot, they just say reboot only. So unfortunately, there's a lot of holes in the theory of just saying, well, I told all my employees once last year at a staff meeting, they should be doing this. If you really want to know you're vigilant on it, there are programs we can put you in that we make sure that it's happening on a routine basis. Because we want to make sure critical and security related patches are always happening. Statistics will also show you most people that are compromised through some sort of security patch or vulnerability happened over a year after that patch was released. So that tells you a majority of these businesses are not patching at least on an annual basis. So most of these compromises are happening a year after a patch was released. Excuse me. Strategic technology partnership. You want to make sure you have a strategic technology partnership with a qualified IT firm like Walser Technology Group, or that you have an IT department that knows what they're doing. At the end of the day, it's a lot easier for you to already have that partnership in place, that someone knows your network, someone knows your passwords, somebody can help steer you in the right direction on making sure you're doing your integrity checks, making sure that your backups are set up correctly and some are going to an off-site location. All of those things are coming, and it's a lot easier done on our own time rather than, hey, I've got 30 employees with nothing to do because we're completely down. Help. We certainly get involved in those scenarios, but it's stressful for all parties, and it's a lot easier when we say, hey, that's all right, we've got good image level backups, we're going to bring them over from our data center, we're going to blow everything away and start over. And we've had to do that for some local firms that have gotten ransomware. So it's very important to know you've got a technology partnership with someone who's qualified, or that your IT department is up to date on the things they need to know to make sure you're being vigilant. For the insurance companies in the room, you can also talk to your insurance company about cyber liability insurance. That's not a bad way to hedge against some of your losses. You know, again, I wish I could tell you, hey, you've engaged Walser Technology, nothing bad could ever happen to you. Well, I'd be lying to you. I can tell you we're very good at what we do. We put a lot of processes in place. We've got a lot of very good strategic partnerships with great vendors. But at the end of the day, sometimes if it's your day, you're just going to be had. And yes, we can help you restore from backup, but a lot of people do mitigate this with cyber liability insurance. And then our security awareness training program. This is what I wanted to make sure everyone's aware of today. If there's one thing you can walk out to know is you need to make your employees aware. They need to be aware of what's out there. They need to be aware of what to look for. Just because you know, just because you're staying up to date, that doesn't mean your office manager is. That doesn't mean your controller is. That doesn't mean any of your employees are. They hear cybersecurity and shut down and say, I don't like that stuff. I don't understand any of it. And that's fine. That's why you need to have a program in place that helps train people on what to do. Excuse me. So our program does some live training presentations like this. We walk you through a lot of those are 2 examples, some of our posters that we showed you. We do computer-based training as well, some mandatory, some optional. As you are failing these tests, we're going to give you even more mandatory training. We have the custom infographics. There's currently 5 in our series that hang around the office that all reinforce this training material. We do continued simulated phishing attacks on your organization. After I do that baseline we talked about earlier, and I know that 50% of your users are clicking on things they shouldn't, well, as you go into this program, every month we're taking statistics and we want to see that number shrink. We want to see it go from 50% ideally down to 0%. That's what you're striving for. You also want to see that, hey, in that first test, only 3 of my 30 employees actually told somebody they got something fishy. You want to see that number get up closer to 100%. You want people to be aware and vigilant on what they're reporting. You also want people not to be clicking on attachments or links. So those are the 2 things that we focus on as we go through these continued simulated phishing attacks. We also help you define that incident response plan. Who and how are you supposed to notify? You know, what happens if there's a possible incident? Again, changing your user's behavior. It is not a trivial task. It is something that takes multiple touch points. It takes multiple reinforcement. You can certainly just say, yes, we phished our organization once, we checked the box, we're done, we move on. But I can guarantee you, you wait 3 months, do it again, you're going to have the same results. People learn something and it's great, but then it goes right out because days are busy, people are busy. Every employee is going to tell you they've got too much on their plate to focus on cybersecurity. So it's got to be something your organization takes seriously and go through a program like this where we have multiple touch points throughout the year and we're actually watching statistics go in the right direction. Any questions? Sure.
What's the best way to maintain passwords? What's the safest? You know, I don't have post-it notes. Passwords on my computer, but I do have a Word document.
Gotcha.
With passwords.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a multitude. I've got too many, I can't keep up with the 2 passwords, much less, I've got a lot of credit cards.
That's a wonderful question. I get this question a lot, and we'll answer it in a couple of pieces. Most of the time when I'm asked that question, what's that? Oh, the question is, how do I manage my passwords? What do you recommend? Because it's really hard for me to remember more than 2 passwords to be able to get into systems. That's the question. That's a great question. I personally have 2 things that I subscribe to. One is I have an Excel spreadsheet rather than a Word document, but it is password protected by a simple password on my desktop of my computer. Because you know what, for someone to get to the desktop of my computer, they've got to get through a lot of layers of security to get there. And if they ever do get the document, it still has another password on it before they can read it. So that's what I use, a Word document, Excel document, same way, you can do that. I also subscribe to using a very gnarly and complex passphrase. That passphrase has 12 characters, uppers, lowers, symbols, everything about it. But you know what? Every site I go to, I inject different characters in it. Maybe in the front, maybe in the middle, maybe at the end. If you're going to your F&M banking site, you can have this gnarly passphrase, and right in the middle put FM. And you know what? If I go then to Integro Technologies, it can have an IT in the middle of it. And you know what? If somebody gets that password and injects it across all these sites, it won't work. It's got a 2-character difference between all of my passwords. So at the end of the day, that's what I do so that I don't have to remember 200 passwords. I remember a gnarly passphrase, and then I just have to remember a 2-character difference on each one. That's something you can do that just helps you not have to write it down, put it on a sticky note, and post it to your monitor so you remember it. There are all sorts of password applications out there. The free ones, I get this question a lot. Hey, I got this ad that popped up. There's a free password management app. Should I use that? Well, if it's a free app and it's asking to put all of your most sensitive data in it, they've got to make money somehow. And the answer is no. I would not trust any free app out there, no matter how great you think the company is. Because most of these free apps, you have no idea who the developers are, where they're storing your data, and who has access to the backside of it. So I am not a fan of those free apps. There are some paid apps out there, and I won't say they're all bad. You just have to do your due diligence to know, is it an American-based company? Where's your data stored? Is there a 2-part key? There's a lot of other questions you have to ask before you subscribe to one of those password management programs or applications. So does that answer your question, Dean?
Let's hold the rest of the questions towards
Okay.
the end. We've got a couple more things to get through, and we'll make sure we got plenty of time for Q&A.
Wonderful. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Tanya Barber, the Information Security Officer for F&M Bank.
Thank you, Brad.
You're welcome.
Good morning. Cybersecurity, definitely a spooky subject on Halloween. I'm going to talk about some best practices. Now that Brad's scared you to death, I'm scared to turn on your computer now. I'm going to talk about some things that you can do to protect yourself, though. So protecting your identifiable information. So let me see a show of hands of those that still use paper in their offices. I'm guilty of it. As hard as I try to go electronic, I still have paper. So here's some things you can do to protect the papers that are in your office. So require all documents that contain your business or customer information to be secured at the end of each business day. And that's not just the end of each day. That's also if you go to lunch, if you get up to go to the bathroom, if you're stepping away from your desk, to be sure that papers are secure. I step away from my desk, I lock my door. I shut my door and I lock it. As Brad talked about, I lock my computer because it literally just takes seconds of someone, you've stepped away to the bathroom, you've stepped away for lunch, and someone can grab their phone and walk right up to your desk and take a picture of your desktop or anything that's on your desk. So you want to be sure that you put everything behind a locked door or keep it in a locked filing cabinet. And maybe you have some desk that doesn't lock, get a filing cabinet that does. That's easily to get. Do not allow employees to take documents home that contain customer information. You could have neighbors in your home, you could have vendors in your home to come and work on something, and someone could easily get a hold of those documents and take pictures, take them with, and you take the documents with them. Also use an on-site shredder to destroy documents or use a third party. So make sure that anything that has any customer information, don't just throw it in the trash. You want to make sure that you shred that information. Protecting your system from vulnerabilities. Brad referred this to as patch management. Same thing. Software vendors provide regular patches or updates to their products to correct known security flaws and to improve functionality. A best practice is to download and install these updates as soon as they become available. So don't wait, don't put it off. It is important to do that as soon as possible. Don't think, well, I'll do it next month, and then something happens, you get busy. Well, I'll do it the next month. You need to do those as quickly as possible. Also, if you can, configure the software to install updates automatically. Back up your data as often as you can. Also, make sure you test that backup. So at the bank, we do backups every single day, but it's only as good as if you test it. So you may want to think, well, I'm doing those backups. It's good. That information's there, but if you're not testing it, it's not doing you any good. So not only do you want to make sure you do them, but you want to test them to make sure it is actually working. Verification of wires, electronic payments, and checks. Brad talked about Cabarrus County. I don't know about y'all, but $2.5 million, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money to me. So there's some things that you can do to prevent that from happening. And one of the things, call back and verify any information that's emailed or faxed. So pick up the phone. If you get an email from someone saying, wire this money to pay for an invoice for your business, pick up the phone. Call them and say, hey, I'm just verifying this. It's so easy to hack an email nowadays. You can leave your computer on at a conference room, or you're at Starbucks and you leave your computer and walk away. Someone can easily hack your email, and it's happened. It's happened many times. So you want to make sure that you pick up that phone. That's why it's so important to make sure you have relationships. That whenever you call that customer, you know that that's that customer on that phone. That you can call them and say, hey, Bonnie, can you verify this? Did you send me this information? I just want to verify. And they should appreciate that call back and explain to them, I just want to make sure you're the one that sent me this information. So call a number that you have on file. Don't go by the number that's on the email. You want to make sure that that's the number that you have on your file, or the number that you have for that person. Do not rely on a number provided in the email, since the hacker could have changed this number. Do not respond to the email to make verification, since again, hackers could be in control of that email. So just responding to it, and it's so easy. My email address is tbarber@fmbnc.com, but they could change it to tbarber@fmbmc.com, and it's so easy to miss something like that. So you want to make sure that you call them versus replying to that email. Verify that the beneficiary's name and address is who the wire is to benefit and not someone new. And then always you want to utilize, if possible, dual control. So again, worth repeating, verify all new or change requests for online payments or physical address changes with the customer via a trusted phone number, not an email. So protecting computers and your Wi-Fi networks. Make sure your computers are up to date with the latest antivirus software and firewalls to block unwanted access. Keep your Wi-Fi network secure. This also includes your router, by using your own password, which only your staff has access to. And I'll mention that at the bank, we have Wi-Fi, but I don't know the password. Other employees here don't know the passwords. That's something that our IT director, Jim, sitting up front here, he's the one that has to set that up for us on our devices. He does not share that password with us, so we can't share it with someone else to keep our network very secure. However, we do have a guest network, so that we're able to share that with any customers or any of our other employees that do not have access to our Wi-Fi. They can use the guest network. Require all employees to password protect their devices, encrypt their data, and install security apps to prevent criminals from accessing the device while it is connected to public networks. Even your phones, your mobile devices, your anything should be password protected. Your laptops. A lot of times you see phones laying around. My phone's sometimes laying around, but I always lock it when I walk off. I have an iPad. When I walk away, I'll lock it. My laptop, I'll lock it. You don't want somebody to walk up and grab it, especially your phones. If you're like me, there's customer information on my phone. I don't allow anyone else to use my phone. I don't hand it to somebody else to play with. I know people like to hand their phones to their kids just to kind of keep them quiet if you're at supper or something. Be careful doing that, because they can easily email something to someone else accidentally and share some customer information or some of your information that you're not wanting shared. So make sure that your devices are even password protected. Develop and enforce reporting procedures for securing personal devices while away from the office. Securing them in the trunk of your car during daily activities, that keeps it out of sight. That even goes for, you know, women's pocketbooks. It's so easy when you get out and you want to run the store. I'm like, well, I'm just going to leave it sitting here on, you know, on my passenger seat and not worry about taking it in with me. Well, it's just, that's the sign. Come break into my car and steal my pocketbook. You could have if your pocketbook's like mine, it probably has my phone, has my iPad in it, and now they have access to those devices too. So you always want to make sure that you lock those up. Put them in the trunk where they're out of sight. If you don't have a trunk, make sure you cover them up or just take it with you. Do not allow others to use your devices. If someone walks up to you and says, hey, can I use your phone, Brad? No. I need a call. I've got an emergency. I need to call somebody. I'll make that phone call for you. They can get a hold of your phone. They can email something. They can get information off your phone. So never allow anyone. I've had people come up to me before and say, hey, can I use I've got an emergency. I need to call. My car broke down. I'll be glad to make that phone call for you. And be sure you report stolen or lost devices immediately. Time and time again, we have somebody a week later, oh, I've lost my phone. I can't find it. Well, you have bank information on there. You need to report it immediately because a lot of times you're able to shut down those devices. So if someone does get a hold of the device, we can wipe it, make sure to take it out of service so new information is available on that phone. So procedures and training for employees. Limit employee access to the data systems that they need for their jobs. So Jim locks me down. If it's something I don't need access to, he locks me down from being able to get to it. So if you've got other people in your business, make sure they can't get to everything. Only allow them to have access to what they need. Require permission to install any software. Again, at the bank, we can't, and I know everybody complains about this. This is always hard when you're trying to install something or do something and you have to have our IT department do that. But they're going to make sure that it doesn't have a virus. There's nothing on that download that's going to cause us to end up with some ransomware or some other type of virus. Set standards for password complexity. Uppercase, lowercase, numerical, and symbols. Like Brad mentioned, use some passphrases. Jim's had to work on my computer before. My password was probably this long. He's like, what in the world? But nobody's going to figure it out. Make sure a separate user account is created for each employee and require strong passwords. And use multi-factor authentication. Brad mentioned this. You'll see it as 2FA, multi-factor, secondary, but again, it's very useful because we have systems that we have to access and no one else can access it unless they have my mobile phone. And I have to go into an app and I've got to put in my password and then go to that app to get another password. So someone would have to have my phone and my password to be able to access that information. Brad also talked about KnowBe4. We have our own IT staff, so we use KnowBe4, but this is something also that you could get used through Brad. So before, we would have to come up with our own phishing tests that we would do for our employees, and now we use KnowBe4. And I know all the F&M employees that are in here just absolutely love getting phished, probably once a month, if not more. And believe it or not, it's not we're trying to catch them, like, aha, we caught you, you clicked on this link. It's to make them aware. It makes you think that before you click on a link in an email, you want to go in and look at it. So we have them, I would say, very paranoid about clicking on anything. But that's, again, as it's been said, I'm the weakest link at the bank. You're the weakest link. It's your business. Jim has our bank all set up with all the lights and the fence and the dogs that, yeah, they want to go to the next house. But if I'm sitting there and I'm clicking on a link that I shouldn't, I'm the weakest link. I'm the one that's going to let that bad guy in the door, and they're going to be able to have access to customer information. So KnowBe4 is great. We do use them to do our phishing test. We set it up automatically. We go in and make modifications probably each month, but it automatically does it for us. It's very inexpensive, and like I mentioned, Brad can also do that for you, but it gives you reporting. If an employee were to fail a test and actually get phished, they have to take training. If they get phished again, they've got to take more training. If they get phished again, they're going to have to take even longer training. So it's a great tool to have, and it's been very beneficial for us at the bank. So if you do, If you do phishing tests, make sure you provide some procedures to your employees to notify someone if they have clicked on a phishing link. The last thing you want to, and I've heard stories of this, we do training at the bank, and we've heard stories of, at some banks, there was a teller, not at our bank, but another bank when we were doing some training, that had clicked on a phishing link, had gotten a virus on her computer, but was scared to tell anyone. And so this went on and on and on. This bank ends up getting hacked because of that. And it was a teller who just was scared to tell that they had done this. So make sure you have procedures, because the quicker it's reported, the faster you can do something. So next up is Rhonda Martin. Rhonda is our Treasury and Merchant Services Relationship Officer at the bank.
Well, good morning, everyone. Now that we have talked about what all terrible things can happen, and as we've said, scared to death to turn on a computer, we are going to now talk about the products that we have in place for customers that will protect you and be a proactive measure for any loss of funds. These are the products we have, and then we'll go through them individually and discuss how they do protect you. We have the Positive Pay products, which is a check verification model through our online banking. We have an ACH filter block, which is also through the online banking. And then for those customers that like to send out electronic payments, we want to make sure that we put them on that two-factor authentication, and we use the security tokens. We actually have the physical tokens that we offer our customers, and then we also have where you can download on your smartphone, and that's really where most of our customers are going. We even have that through the bank ourselves, and getting to our laptop, we have that two-layer and have the app on our phone. Check verification. First, I want to start this off. How many of you carry car insurance in case you get hit? You want to make sure you've got insurance. Well, guess what this is? This is your insurance on your money in case you get hit. So that's kind of the way you want to look at it. If you're going to protect your car, why would you not want to protect your funds? The check verification model, what it allows you to do is you, through your account payable software, will export the check information, then import that into our online banking portal. We provide all the training, we come out, we show you how to get that information into our online portal. That then brings it into the back end of our core processing. And on that, as those checks are clearing through the overnight, it's able to verify the information you have provided. If everything matches up that is on each of those checks, then we are able to pay that check. If it does not match, then we kick that out as an exception. We alert you and let you know, hey, you need to view this item and make sure that this is an item you want to pay. With that, sometimes you just do a handwritten check and you forget, I didn't upload that information. So this gives you that option to go ahead and pay it, but if it's not, we've stopped it. Now you do not have the loss of funds and going back, because that's what customers and people don't understand is it's true loss of funds once that check clears and it was a fraudulent item. This is how we're going to stop it. As you can see over here, 78% of organizations have experienced fraud attempts. We have several customers with us today that have experienced these fraud attempts, and they are using our products. So it does happen. The average loss is $20,000 per attempt. I can tell you, as Terry Osborne said, his first attempt was $26,000. We've had a customer locally in the last 6 months. They've done everything they needed to do, but what they did is by paying a vendor, that vendor keeps their customer information, our customer's information, in their computer. This vendor had some issues with QuickBooks. Oh, let me Google the number because I don't have it right here on my desktop or in my Rolodex. Let me Google the number to QuickBooks. They Google the number, they call QuickBooks, so they think. What has happened is they had someone that was not a part of QuickBooks. They've called, they said, can you help me? Absolutely, let us remote into your computer. He let them remote in. What did the person do? But steal the information and started sending out fraudulent checks. Our customer was the one that the information was stolen. $65,000 later, as a low estimate, we were able to stop all of this because we got a call. But that was the potential loss in one incident, and it was about 70 checks nationally that all started out of Concord, North Carolina. We were getting calls from California verifying checks. So it can go rapid. So the average loss is 20,000, but it can be a whole lot higher. 1.2 million fraud items have gone through the Fed system, and it's growing annually at 25%. Check fraud is now your top commercial fraud. It's now the most popular commercial incident is the fraud with checks. Check fraud losses are approximately at $20 billion a year. ACH filter block. This is just another way for most of us allow companies to draft our accounts. Duke Power, Blue Cross Blue Shield, whatever that is, you just think, oh, you know what? Just draft my account. It makes it a whole lot easier and I don't have to cut that check. Well, we've had a customer that has also, being that they allowed that and someone got a hold of their check, they started sending in ACH files, electronic payments to draft from their account. What this allows is for you to, again, give us information of those people that you want to draft your account. We're able to put that into our system and it filters that information. It keeps from anyone else getting any kind of payment from you. So we basically build a file on the back end that will not allow ACHs to come through, those electronics to come through that were not as a approved transaction. You can also do a total block. If you're just one that doesn't want any kind of electronic payments coming out, you can totally block your account from anything coming. 30% of organizations have been a subject to ACH fraud. As you can see, the numbers are lower, but guess what? The average loss is higher because it moves a whole lot quicker. They can send that file one day and they've got the funds that afternoon or the next day, depending on how the bank handles their ACH files, if it's same day or next day. So as you can see, it is a higher loss, but less companies are that. And the purpose and the reason behind this is because, as we've talked about in earlier conversations today, the gaps in your the security controls. Now, as we've said, we've talked about the 2-layer authentications, two-factor, making sure that you're totally protected. So what we have in place, once we set up a customer that is going to send out electronic payments through our online banking system, we want to make sure that they are protecting themselves, especially if they've got multiple users that are going to be sending out. So we do use a token-based authentication for security measures. As you can see, the one that we have is a token, and that is just like as you see in the picture, it's a little token that you press a button and you get a 6-digit code once you sign in. It makes you put that digit in. So that way, if you've been hit by cybersecurity and a keystroke virus has been put on your computer, the good thing is once you sign into online banking, they cannot get this code. It is a rotating code. It rotates every 20 seconds. The other product that we have, which all of us have, is a smartphone. And as I said, most people are going to this so that when they're traveling, they have their smartphone, can open up the app. We actually have this at F&M just to get into our laptops. If we're at home or if we're with a customer for off-site, when we key in to get into our system, we have to go to our phones, pull down a 6-digit code, and then sign in. It's the best way to keep those hackers from getting to the next level. Now I'll turn it back over to Steve Fisher. Thank you.
So it's Halloween. You sufficiently scared? I hope so. You should be. I try to get my folks where they are sufficiently paranoid at all times. There's a lot of folks out there trying to get us. There are a lot of solutions to this. I know most of your businesses in the room, and there are many different sizes. There are small pieces of all of this that fit with every size of your business. Some simple things you heard today. Call back using a number that you know. If Cabarrus County did that, $1.7 million is still going into a school, not somewhere out there in the world. Don't trust everything you get on the internet. Duh. We've known that for years. Use that in your businesses. If you get an email saying, change this, do something differently, call that person with a number or email that person with an email you have. Don't use the information that's on there. So there are things that are literally that simple. In terms of phishing, that's really the biggest risk. If you walk out of here, Brad and I talked about it, if you walk out of here and don't hear anything else, fish yourself and fish your employees. You can do this, no matter if you're a 2-person shop or a 150-person shop. Brad can set you up. You need to have that practice. You need to have that mentality going on in your small business every day, that I am on the lookout. I've got a CFO now that won't respond to anything. We're trying to teach him to actually go back and actually email respond. He is so paranoid. But I'd rather have him there than have him on the other end of the spectrum. So think about that with your folks. We've got a lot of folks down here that can answer a bunch of questions. We're running a little late. I don't want to keep you away from your businesses. If you need to leave, please feel free to go. If you'd like to stay for questions and continue to do that in this context, we can do that as well. So any questions that have not been answered?
How truly awful is it to have saved passwords in websites?
How truly awful is it to have saved passwords in websites? So everybody knows when you go to a website and you sign in, whether you get in a hotel room or whatever else, would you like to save this password? I'll give you my secret. I always hit no, and I'll let Brad answer for himself.
That is definitely the safe answer, to say no. It is fine to do it until it's not. And that's a very odd answer, but if you get some sort of malware on your machine, there are very easy pieces of software that can be run that extract all of your saved passwords away from your machine. So it's a convenience, and I'll be the first one to tell you, high security and high convenience, they directly correlate with each other. They are contradictory terms. You're not going to be convenient if you want to be highly secure. And most people err to convenience, and there's a lot of room to get more secure in organizations.
I'll back that one up. I've got a lot of teammates on that back row who yell at Jim constantly because it's difficult. You just heard, if you're going to get on a laptop in our company, you're going through two-factor authentication, easy for me to say. But it drives them crazy. But I would rather keep your data safe at our bank than make it more convenient for my folks to do their work. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. Other questions? That's a great one.
Steve, this is a question, but I'm always naive enough to think I'm a small little company in a small little town. Who's going to want to hack my account? I read about some computer guy set up a new website, totally bogus, no company, nothing, didn't put any firewalls or anything up, and within an hour, it was hacked. So you have these automatic things out there that just search the web.
Yeah, they're using bots to search the web. They're also stealing tons of data that no matter what you do, your name pops up at a website you used 3 years ago. And so they're coming after you for nothing you've done, just that you showed up there. Yes, they are after that one little man shop in Salisbury, and they're after IBM as well. They're equal opportunity crooks. They're coming after everybody.
I wanted to make a comment about the cell phones. One of the things, I guess that maybe people don't think about is almost like identification, because a lot of the resets and passwords get texted to you with code that you read in to change your passwords on a lot of the sites and stuff like that. So And even like when you're calling sometimes to pay your bill over the phone, recognize you're calling from your number, you want to use the last payment you used, things of that nature.
Correct.
It's almost kind of like an identification where they actually identify you by the fact that you're using your phone.
And I will tell you, not to, again, scare you on Halloween, you can go and do a nice Google search and you can find, how do I spoof somebody's phone number? And there are plenty of scams where I can look like I'm you calling the bank, and I can ask them to do something, and if they're simply going by caller ID, I can now impersonate you very easily. So spoofing a phone number is just about as easy as spoofing an email address. So just, again, be vigilant. That's where it's, again, very nice to have the relationship. You've talked to the person before. You know what they sound like. You have different items on your account that they have to identify to make sure that you know who they are. That's where all those other layers come in. But it is easy to spoof a phone number these days.
And we tell our customers, because we've been spoofed. We've gotten multiple calls from customers who said, I got a call from F&M Bank and it didn't sound right and they wanted this and this and this. It wasn't us. It showed up on their phone as us. They spoofed our phone number. How many of you have ever called yourself? I've had that happen. You look at your phone and you're calling you. That's somebody spoofing your number. It's happened to me. So again, always go back and use a trusted number you have. If you get a call from F&M Bank saying, we found fraud on your account, we need to know this and this and this, say, thank you very much. I appreciate you alerting me. I'll call you back. And then you go call your local branch or whoever you deal with at F&M Bank and you work through that issue with them. We're not going to call you and ask you for any of your identification information. If you call us, we will ask. But we're not going to call you and ask for that. If somebody's calling you and asking for that, that's not us. And by the way, that's not anybody else that you do business with. And it shouldn't be a practice they do. So anybody calling you and asking for some type of identification information, hang up, call back if it's something you feel you need to do. Other questions? These are all good. Tommy?
I use password manager and do dual factor authentication on everything. The problem with, unlike F&M's little token that's on the phone, most of that DFA is through texting. And now I read about SIM card swapping. Well, how big a threat is that?
I'm going to let the expert handle that.
So, you know, I will be the first one to tell you there is nothing foolproof out there. SIM card swapping is a real threat. You can even read articles in the security world. Doesn't matter which two-factor that you use, people can figure out ways around it. I'm going to go back to that stance of you don't want to be low-hanging fruit. If you're not doing it, you become exponentially easier to target and to compromise. And you know, if somebody has a vengeance against you, I have a customer that holds highly sensitive, market-sensitive data. And this is the crown jewels of what they do, and we decided many years ago we were developing a system, and we made it air-gapped. That's the industry term. So it's an air-gapped system. It's completely off the network. It's in a secured room. I mean, it's like what you'd see on Mission Impossible. You know, hey, you've got to go through 2 factors or 2 layers of locked doors. You get in there, you've got to actually, can't take cell phones in to do any kind of screen scraping. You can stand behind a terminal and look at data. Well, I read an article about a year after we put that in place. You know what? MIT figured out how they can hack a machine from maybe 100 yards away by viewing what's on the monitor of a completely air-gapped system. And I'm like, how in the world is this possible? So it's one of those things that there's always smart criminals finding out ways around these layers of security. But you know what? You've got to know you're doing everything to be vigilant, to know that you're trying the best not to be low-hanging fruit. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, there's no foolproof way, and SIM card swapping is a real item, and people intercepting text. But you know, if you're using Verizon for your text, and you're using Microsoft for your email, then that's 2 different systems they got to try to hack to get those 2 pieces of information to get in as you. Is it possible? Yes, but it's extremely hard and difficult, and is someone going to spend hours or days on you, or they can just go to the next guy that doesn't even have 2-factor? That's the question.
And that really is a simple answer. Everybody's seen the movie Ocean's 11. You want to be Terry Benedict, but let's be honest, Danny Ocean can get you if he wants to spend enough money and enough months doing it. But you want to push them through all those loops to get there because there's a lot easier, lower hanging fruit out there for him to go after. Other questions? Really good stuff. All right, I hope you leave here with a healthy dose of paranoia. Because it's not really paranoia if they're out to get you. And trust me, folks, they're out to get you. Our folks will be around for a while if you want to talk about anything you've heard about today to help you. And certainly, Brad, one of the questions we got the other day that I do want to cover. Know Before is something you can do directly with your company. You can reach out to them. They are very cost effective. You'll be surprised how cost effective they are to help fish your folks and work through those. You can set that up yourself. If you're a smaller company and don't have an IT person, Brad can set that up for you. It is still very cost effective. He can run it for you and he will fish you. If you've only got 2 people that are on the internet in your company, fine. Get Brad to fish those 2 people. Make them paranoid to the level they need to be. Thank you for being F&M Bank customers. By the way, I think everybody, I see every face in the room, I think you all are. Even if you're not, your bank should have these services. Reach out, start using them, start being that house on the street that nobody wants to break into.